What brings me happiness now? I could wake up. I don't have to devote my whole entire day to finding drugs, to manipulating people. I have money in the bank. I have money saved up. People trust me. My parents talk to me again. I have friends, actual friends, not just friends that I would use drugs with and run with. People that I could call my friend. I have a car again. I have a license. I'm out of jail. I went to the mall the other day. I bought new clothes. I could actually spend money on things that aren't drugs. I'm just living quote unquote normal life. My name is Brendan. I am 34 years old.
All right. So, take me back to high school and how you started with drugs and all that, and where.
Probably the first drug I ever did was before high school. Was middle school. In middle school, I tried marijuana. Pretty sure I smoked weed before I started drinking. I mean, it was pretty close, but I'm pretty sure I did smoke weed before I started to drink. Those drugs led to very many other drugs. Like I said, pretty much anything I could get my hands on, I wanted to try. I wanted to try everything except for really, like the really hard stuff like heroin. So whatever I could find, I would do, whether it was...
So at first you knew that you didn't want to do heroin or something, like anything like that, too extreme at first.
Right. I mean, no one really wants to say they want to be a heroin addict when when they grow up. But I did enjoy smoking weed, and I wanted to try something more. I wanted to experiment with different drugs and see what the different highs were like, and that started with weed. That's why they say weed is the gateway drug. I completely agree with that. I think that it is, and I just took whatever I was doing to the extreme. So I'd smoke weed pretty much every day. I started in middle school into high school. I would smoke before school, during school, after school, and I just made it my life.
So whenever you could get high, you would get high, type of thing.
Yes, and I would hang out with people that always had weed or would smoke weed.
So it was always around.
Yes, it was always around. I don't think I went 1 or 2 days my whole high school career without smoking pot.
Wow.
And definitely drinking on the weekends.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I just made it my priority to find out where the party was and to drink.
So when did it go from just weed to something else? The pills, or you were mentioning ecstasy.
Shortly after, just whenever the certain drug was around, I would do it. I mean, nothing was really that big of a problem during high school. I'd say after I graduated high school and went into college that more of the uppers became a problem, such as Adderall and cocaine.
Okay. So do you want to talk about like your home life, where you lived when you were growing up, in the high school and all that?
Yeah, I pretty much had a normal life. I never had anything traumatic happen to me when I was growing up. My parents were married. They're still married. I have a younger sister. She's 5 years younger than me. We weren't rich, but we weren't poor, middle-class family. I lived in Deer Lakes, West Deer Township, about
It's all by Fox
a
Chapel.
half hour north of the city,
Yeah.
by Fox Chapel, Pine Richland. Kind of a smaller school. I think I graduated with about 190 people.
Wow.
So not that big, not that small,
Mhm.
but you pretty much know everyone in your grade, in your school, for the most part. But I never played sports when I was growing up. I never was involved in any like extracurricular activities. I got good grades. I wasn't a complete burnout. I just really liked to party, to drink, to smoke weed, to do drugs, and that's like what I was good at. So I just continued to do that. And like I said, I got into college. I got good grades. I got into college. Even when I entered college, it took me a while to graduate, but I did get good grades, and I was a good student for the most part. I just partied way too much. That was my first priority over everything.
Makes sense. I mean, like, yeah, that's do you wish, looking back, that you had gathered more extracurriculars or found a sport or an instrument or something that you could have done to kind of take up time? Or do you think that you were instinctively driven to party? Like, that was your thing?
That's a good question. I don't know. I wish I would have got into something. It was just hard for me to find something that I was good at doing. I tried to do sports and I wasn't good at it. I tried to play a few instruments. I wasn't good at it. I probably didn't try hard enough. But I knew I was just really good at drinking and smoking weed and doing drugs, and I would hang out. It was just fun for me.
Mm-hmm. So when did opioids come into play?
Not until later down my life. Probably towards the end of college, I started messing with Suboxone, which is weird because usually you take Suboxone to come off of the opiates to get rid of the sickness that you get from dependency on them.
So as a method of quitting.
Correct. But if you take the Suboxone, especially if you don't have a tolerance to opiates, you could get really messed up from it, and you can get really high from taking them. So I started to, take the pills, snort the pills, and slowly get addicted to that. It wasn't until I graduated from college that I started to get into like Roxicet, Percocet 30s, prescription opiates, and then that led to the heroin. Also, the uppers really played a big effect in the opiate problem because when you're doing extreme uppers and you're up for days, a way to come down is to take a downer or drink, or the quick way would be to take a pill
so you
or
do
heroin.
More drugs trying to stabilize yourself.
Correct.
Yeah,
to come down from the uppers. And that just became a huge problem, and before you know it, you're physically addicted to these drugs, like drugs such as...
Can you describe what a physical addiction is like?
You need it to go about your life. You get physically sick when you stop taking it. So if you're taking 30s, which are pills, or if you're doing heroin every day, you do it for a month or so, and you're going to get physically addicted to it. So when you stop, you get ill, very ill, like the worst sickness you'll ever get in your life. And the only way to get rid of it is to take that drug.
Suboxone.
or heroin, whatever, any opiate.
Okay.
Drugs such as cocaine and crack, uppers usually don't have a physical dependency. You're just kind of mentally dependent on it. But opiates and opioids definitely do, and it's
terrible.
The worst thing in the world to come off of them.
Yeah. So how long would you say you were addicted for to opioids?
Right now it's going on 13, 14 years since after I graduated college in 2010. Yeah, so
11 years.
Yeah, something like that, yes.
And you've been clean for how long?
I almost have 8 months coming up here at the end of the month.
So, Keeks, so obviously having nearly, a little over 10 years, I mean, that gets ingrained in you. How hard is it to quit? How many times did you try to quit seriously and it failed? Can you talk more about that?
Yeah, I went pretty hard for a very long time. I didn't go to my first rehab till I think I was 32 years old, which was a couple years ago. The heroin use just got so out of control that I tried to quit on my own. I quit Suboxone on my own before, which is probably even harder than heroin. and I was living at my parents when I did it. You're sick literally for months. Like with heroin withdrawal, you'll be sick for about a week. Suboxone and methadone, you're sick for at least a month. I was sick for 2 months, but I was doing them for years.
Yeah.
I did that on my own. Now, the Suboxone and the methadone sickness isn't as intense as the heroin withdrawal, but it's just really drawn out and longer.
Mm-hmm.
Like I said, it takes 1-2 months to get off of it. The heroin withdrawal is just really intense for a week, and I could not do that on my own. I was living with a roommate at the time, and he was using as well, and I couldn't pay my rent. I had no money for bills. I was actually evicted already from my apartment that I was living in, and I admitted myself to rehab for the first time at White Deer Run out in Allenwood, PA. And I don't know if I wasn't ready to really get clean then, or I think I just did it to kind of restart so I wouldn't be sick so much. So I went through the treatment. I did the 30 days up there. I did the detox, which was terrible. It was rough. It was really cold out there. It was one of the worst winters they ever had. It's in the middle of nowhere, freezing cold. And I left, and I immediately got high when I got home.
Oh, that fast.
I moved into the apartment that I was evicted from. My landlord at the time kind of wasn't forcing me out in a way like she eventually did, but I still had the apartment and I had nowhere to live, so I had to go back there in order to survive. I wasn't allowed to my parents. I had nowhere else to go.
Mm-hmm.
And I just started back over, started using heroin. I was using a lot of meth at the time too, so I was trying to come off of both of those drugs. So I ran for another probably 4 or 5 months to when I actually got kicked out of this apartment. I had literally nowhere to go at this point.
Mm-hmm.
So it was either me be homeless, sick on the streets, or go to rehab and just go from there. Because when you go into rehab, they can place you into a halfway house when you complete, or they can set you up in a 3/4 house. I couldn't do that without going to a rehab, so I had to go to a rehab. I didn't like the first one I went to, which was White Deer Run, so I tried a different one, which was Gateway in Aliquippa. I like that a lot better. And again, I did the 30 days or whatever. You know, I did good in rehab. I got out, and I had nowhere to go. I didn't want to go into a halfway house because halfway houses, you're kind of stuck there for about 6 months. It's a long process.
Mm-hmm.
3/4 houses, you can kind of come and go as you please. You can work right away.
Can you explain what a halfway house and a 3/4 house is? Just like
yes, if your insurance typically will pay for a halfway house, so you don't have to pay for it out of pocket.
Mm-hmm.
But it's pretty much rehab that's not inpatient. You're in a house with other people. You're required to do stuff all day, go to meetings, have house meetings, and then you gain freedom the more time that you stay there. So you'll be able to get a job, not right away, but after probably a couple months,
Mm-hmm.
and then you could work, more and more the longer you're there until you eventually graduate. Halfway houses, they are not covered by insurance. You have to pay out of pocket. It's just kind of like rent that you would pay for at any other place.
Or is that 3/4 or halfway?
That is 3/4.
3/4 you have to. You can't. The insurance doesn't pay for.
No,
Okay, yeah.
they do not. It's just like a house anyone could go to and live, a recovery house. So, being that I had nowhere to live, I had no money, I wanted to go to a 3/4 house, but I couldn't afford it. So, my parents actually came up with the money for me to move in because I didn't want to do the 6 months in a halfway house. And my one buddy at the time was living at the one that I wanted to go to, so he kind of helped me get into it. So I stayed there for about 4 or 5 months. I stayed clean the whole time, and this house, it still kind of sucks because you're paying about $450-$500 a month to live in a place, but you have a roommate.
Mm-hmm.
The one that I did at the time, you did. The one I'm at now, you have your own room, but most you don't have your own room.
Mm-hmm.
So you're sharing a room with 2 or 3 other people, which, who wants to do that?
Yeah.
And there's 4 or 5 rooms, so you're in a house with 15 guys. You're sharing a fridge with someone, you're sharing a room with someone. It typically can get pretty dirty very quickly, and there's just a lot of bad 3-quarter houses all over the place. These people that run them are kind of in it for the money, because once people relapse and leave,
they come back.
They don't refund your money, so then a new person comes in and pays that $500 again. So they make money on people screwing up, relapsing, and leaving.
Yeah.
And typically the rule is if you relapse, you get caught using, you get kicked out of the house for 3 days. I mean, every house is different, but the one I was in, I believe they kick you out for 3 days, you have nowhere to go, and then you can come back. I stayed clean at this place for a while, and it was really unsanitary. It was not, it sucked. I mean, I had bed bugs in my room. It was terrible. There were bed bugs in the whole entire house. So I saved some money. This was in Mount Washington. I got a job at the Lamont restaurant at the time. I saved some money, and I got my own apartment in Bloomfield. This was kind of just recent. And it's easy to stay clean when you're in a house and you're accounted for and you have people watching you, and you can get drug tested, and you can't use drugs because if you do,
they'll test you, kick you out.
And they think you're using, you'll be homeless, you'll get kicked out. But when you're on your own, you can kind of do whatever you want.
Yeah.
So that's what my downfall was. I was on my own, and I started drinking again. And within a week, I was shooting heroin and meth again.
Mm-hmm.
And once I start, I can't stop.
Yeah.
So did that for about a year, as long as my lease was. And then I admitted myself into my 3rd rehab, which was Clear Day in Greensburg. And again, I did the whole 30 days. Mm-hmm. I've never not completed a rehab. Like, when I go to rehab, I'm serious about it. I stay, I complete.
It's just over time, the chemical, because the thing that because I asked the other people this, and it seems like even after like years of quitting, like you still have the inclination to use again, like pretty often, right?
Yeah, and there's certain triggers that'll make you want to use. Boredom for me is a huge one. Money is a huge one.
Do you mean like when you have excess money, you don't have anything to spend it on?
Yes.
Okay.
Or hanging out with people that you used to get high with. They say you need to change your people, places, and things in order for a successful recovery, and that's completely true.
It's
If
true.
you hang out with old people, old friends, old places, you're just going to end up using again.
Right. So, being 8 months clean, how often does it come up in your brain? I wanna do it again.
I mean, the cravings aren't as intense. Obviously, the dope sickness isn't there for me anymore. I mean, it'll come up, to be honest, probably every day.
Every day.
Yes.
Sheesh.
I mean, it'll cross your mind, but it's never so intense that I'm gonna drop everything I'm doing and try to cop drugs. And I live in an area that is not one of the best areas in Pittsburgh. I could probably walk outside my house and find someone walking down the street and get drugs.
Uh-huh.
But I just
don't
want to live like that.
Yeah. So one of the reasons, is that we're trying to prevent kids from doing this is, like later on in your life, it just really starts to take a toll on your body and your brain. So can you kind of talk about some of the things that maybe like you were telling me about your ear last time. If you don't want to talk about that, that's fine. We could just cut that out. But yeah, like tell me like some of the things that happened while you were on drugs that really kind of screwed your life up. Like not your life, but you know, things that happened because you were on drugs that really kind of were bad, you know?
No, pretty much everything. I mean, from your health to your mental health to legal issues, money. I mean, I tell everyone this. You'll just lose everything you have to get that drug, especially with heroin, because you need it in order to function for the day. So when you wake up, you plan on how you're going to get money if you don't have it in order to get the drug. And then whenever you get it, you plan on how you're going to get the next one. Mm-hmm. So you would spend, I mean, I used to have great credit, money in the bank, a job, credit cards. I lost all of that within months.
Within months?
Yes, months.
Can you elaborate?
I drained my bank account. I lost my job, so I had no income coming in. Mm-hmm. I did have a 401k at the time. I took that out. It was probably $4,000 or $5,000. That lasted me, like I said, probably a month. Whenever that was through, I really had nothing to fall back on but my credit. My credit cards, I had a bunch of credit cards because I had good credit. So I would Western Union credit to myself and get money that way, or I would buy gift cards on credit, take the gift cards to Cash for Gold places, and they'd give you a percentage in cash, and I would get the cash that way. I would sell everything I had. I would steal bicycles. I'd fix up bicycles. I'd sell bicycles to make money. I did that for a long time. I pretty much sold everything that you could think of, and I got really good at it too. I could sell.
Did you ever get caught?
Anything. This was all pretty much legal except for the bike stealing. I would and this plays into the meth use. I would find things in dumpsters. I would garbage pick, mm-hmm. find items, fix them up, and I would sell them. Mm-hmm. It's really hard to do that every single day, especially when you have to
worry about getting
high and not being sick while you're doing it.
Yeah.
That could only last so long, and it just gets to the point where you have nothing left, and then you're not obviously paying your rent because you can't pay your utilities. Mm-hmm. So you're going to be evicted, and that's what happened the last place I was in. I was there for a year, and my landlord kicked me out because I wasn't paying rent, wasn't paying the bills. Mm-hmm. And again, I went to rehab for the third time at Clear Day in Greensburg, and I was homeless again for the third time. Mm-hmm. I had nowhere to go, no money to get into a place.
So you, for the third time in a row, you pretty much binged until you literally were homeless.
Yes, I go until I can't go anymore.
Would you say that's common among?
I would say yes, it is very common. Yeah, I mean, I go into rehab and I don't have a penny to my name. I don't have cigarettes. I have nothing.
Mm-hmm. So it really takes you to hit rock bottom before you admit yourself into rehab.
For me, yes. Yeah, it definitely does.
Okay. So if you had just something to say to like someone who's thinking about trying drugs or dabbling in opioids right now, you know, like what would you tell them? Kind of, if
I mean, look at the facts. Look at all these people dying. I mean, I've lost so many people to this disease, to opiates in general. I can't even give you a number of how many people that died. I lost track of my friends that died a long time ago.
So it's like past the hundreds, past 100?
I would say yes.
Okay.
I mean, since I've been here, I've had, I think, 5 people that I was close with pass away, and I've been here 7 months.
7 months, so 5 people in 7 months. And these are kind of like the thing that you gotta get across here is that you're already kind of dependent on this drug, right? And then it screws up your mental health, right? As you were saying before. And then you have people dying on top of that, which kind of makes you want to go back to it even more in a kind of
it makes
way.
no sense. I mean, I don't know why anyone would want to get into opiates. There's nothing good about it. If you want to lose everything, if you want to lose your whole entire life, everything you've had forever, relationships, jobs, money, your own life, then go for it. No one that I know could use these drugs successfully and live a productive life.
Yeah.
You just can't do it. You might be able to do it for a little bit, but eventually you're going to crash and burn.
Yeah.
If not die.
Because, like in high school, I've heard people say, I'll just try it one time, or I only do it every couple of weeks, or whatever and I'm talking about opioids. Whatever it is, it's like they think that they're going to be fine, or they think they trust themselves. So what do you have to say about kind of like the cockiness, I would say, of just being like, oh, I can do it 1 or 2 times and it's not gonna affect you.
Yeah, everyone thinks that they could do that, but like I said, I don't think I've met one person that ever could do that. The physical dependency is just, it's too intense. It just is too much. And once you reach that point, there's really no turning back. You're going to need it, like I said, to function throughout the day. There's nothing good about it. And it makes no sense that people do it, come off of it, and then go back to it.
Yeah.
Like myself, I've done it how many times? It makes no sense.
Yeah, it's a corruption of the mind.
Yeah, it really is. And then there's the whole thing on maintenance drugs, which are Suboxone, methadone, like I mentioned earlier.
Mm-hmm.
Those are considered harm reduction medications, and like I said, people that take those, you can live a somewhat normal life, but you're gonna eventually have to come off of them, and you're gonna get sick, and you're gonna have to go through this whole process again.
Can you just explain what methadone and Suboxone, like how they're used? Because I know we were talking about this earlier, where it's like you go into a treatment home and then they give you the Suboxone or the methadone there, and then you have to continue to come back to get it, right?
Yeah, they'll give it to you in rehab in order to come off of the opiates, and then they'll kind of push on you to get a prescription for Suboxone, which is a pill that you take every day, and there's a blocker in it, so you really can't get high from other opiates.
Mm-hmm.
But it is an opioid, and you kind of do get high from taking that. It's just, you're not going to overdose from it, but you're going to get dependent on it really quickly, and it's way harder to come off of those than it is any other drug, just because of the sickness lasts so long. And methadone's the same way, but methadone you really can't get a prescription for and take home with you. You have to go to a clinic every single day, in the morning, afternoon, whatever, and you have to complete so many hours of therapy there in order to get your dose for the day. And they give you a little cup, you drink it, and then you leave. You have to do that every single day.
So one of the kind of shocking things that when we talked the first time that you guys were telling me about was that how often you have to go to meetings even though you're clean. Like the idea that like this is something that you have to maintain. It's like being sober is not a challenge, but it becomes something that you have to kind of maintain. Like it's a maintenance thing. You have to like make sure you go to meetings and stuff. It's pretty often, right? So do you want to talk about that?
Yeah, this is the longest clean time I've had since I started to get clean, and I think the reason is because I'm in a better house now. I still am in a 3/4 house, but I do have my own room, and I do go to meetings every day. If you're going to try this on your own and you're not going to go to meetings, you're not going to get a sponsor, you're really setting yourself up for failure. It's just
not going to happen.
Too hard to do. Like when you're going to meetings, you're around other people that are in the same position as you. You make friends that way, that people that are clean. It gives you something to do. I really haven't talked to too many people, if not anyone, that has gotten clean on their own without going to meetings, without getting a sponsor, without doing 12 steps. Mm-hmm. It's just really unheard of. It's just hard to do. And I've tried in the past to do it on my own, and of course I failed, and shortly after was using drugs.
All right, so you just gave me the 2, so I think we're almost done here.
Yep.
But I thank you very much for doing this, for telling your story. I hope that people are going to take away from this and understand that once you get yourself into this hole, it's kind of like you're always climbing out of it. It feels like that's like the idea that I've gotten